The scripture readings for today, the first one is from Isaiah 61, verses 1 through 4. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me. He has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and release to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, to provide for those who mourn in Zion, to give them a garland instead of ashes, the oil of gladness instead of mourning, the mantle of praise instead of faint spirit. They will be called oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord to display his glory. They shall build up the ancient ruins. They shall raise up the former devastations. They shall repair the ruined cities, the devastations of many generations. And our second scripture this morning is from the Gospel of Matthew. And he will put the sheep at his right hand and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father. Inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these, who are members of my family, you did it to me." This ends the reading of the scripture.
Good morning. Thank you for that fine introduction, Mark. And I want to say right away, thank you for your warm hospitality this weekend. I wrote to them ahead and said, "Is it okay if I arrive 2 days before I'm actually supposed to come to church?" And they graciously have hosted me since Friday. So it's just been great to be here. So I want to start by saying that many years ago, when I was being introduced at my home conference of New England, instead of saying that I had been in ministry in Nicaragua, it was said that I had been in mystery in Nicaragua. So I'm really glad to be here at Hubbard United Methodist Church, and I'd like to share about that ministry, and maybe even a little bit about the mystery of what can happen when we serve others in mission. For me, it all started with a call. The short story of how I was called into mission has its critical moment when I was in dental school in Boston. I was being groomed for private practice and earning a big salary, and this is an admirable career option and can provide a great service. But in my heart, I knew I wasn't called to it. But the other options weren't clear. I said, "God, I'm feeling called," and God was quiet. God often calls us through a process of elimination, finding out first what we're not called to. So I graduated, I worked in a practice, I volunteered at a dental clinic for street youth and runaway youth. I was active in my local United Methodist Church and still feeling called, but God was still quiet. A few years later, an opportunity arose to volunteer in Nicaragua for a year through a church partnership, which eventually led to my current assignment as a United Methodist missionary to the Nicaraguan nonprofit called Acción Médica Cristiana, which translates to Christian Medical Action, or AMC, and I do hope to share more about that, and I hope you'll join us during the fellowship hour. When I got to Nicaragua, this is where God started talking. Here was a chance to work alongside Nicaraguan health professionals and communities who taught me about faith and service and used limited resources and a lot of creativity to improve people's health. I finally felt where I was supposed to be. As I prepared for that first year, I had a lot of great mentors, and we used the passage in Matthew 25 regularly. Feed the hungry, house the homeless, clothe the unprotected, visit the sick, and those in prison. Mission seemed pretty straightforward. We just had to do those things, right? Well, when I arrived, like most new missionaries and volunteers, I was enthusiastic, and I expected that I would be solving huge numbers of dental problems, and I was very focused on concrete results and numbers, and of course my own personal timeline for getting it all done. After all, I had to report back to my supporters, and our U.S. culture is often very task-oriented. So completing tasks was the obvious first measure of my missionary success. In my first newsletter, I even reported how many teeth I extracted on a mobile medical team. And in case you're wondering, it was 179. Now, it's important to say that tasks are necessary, and using my professional skills can help people, but mission is more than that. My preoccupation with going to do something for the Nicaraguans began to shift. An important moment in that shift was at the end of my first year. When I was heading back to the U.S., I was unsure if I was going to return. I felt overwhelmed that so much need was going to continue, yet I could choose to come and go from it. I was feeling terrible. And then I had a conversation with Salvador Ocon, a musician, a farmer, an architect, and a member of the church I was working with at the time. And he said to me, "Belinda, it's great that you fixed and pulled a lot of teeth. But what's more important is that you took a year of your life to come and get to know us, to become our friend. And now you go back to the United States and you tell people about us, about what God is doing here, and how they can journey with us. That is your real gift to us." Salvador's words helped me understand a different perspective about mission, based on solid relationships that make those tasks and numbers more effective and more sustainable. Those relationships would take a long time to develop, and with some important learning on my part. At first, with my extroverted enthusiasm and New England fast-talking culture, I often spoke to the Nicaraguans, and then I couldn't understand why they paused after I finished talking. Taking this to mean they did not understand, I rushed in to fill the pause by saying the same thing in another way, hoping for better comprehension. But I get the same pause each time. It was not until a Nicaraguan church colleague said, or asked, "Are you finished?" that I understood they were being polite and were waiting for me to stop, to be sure that I had shared my idea or question completely before responding. It was an important first lesson in taking time to listen and observe. And as I later began to mentor younger volunteers to Nicaragua, my motto became, "Don't rush the pause." And it became the best practice for learning to be a better missionary in all the work I was yet to do. My role as a missionary assigned to AMC has diversified over the years. It's still very technical and focused on the specific skill in dentistry that I was trained for. But the longer I'm there, the more my role is less about me trying to do everything and more about building the capacity of others, mentoring, facilitating, and helping people do what they do even better. A few years ago, I had the opportunity to travel for 5 days to a remote part of Nicaragua to offer mobile dental care. Mobile in Nicaragua means flying on a small plane, riding in a truck, getting on a motorboat, and traveling for many hours to the communities where we would work. I worked alongside the AMC field staff and a dental worker named Orlando Jacobo. Orlando is Mosquito indigenous and comes from the community of Dos Amigos. For you Spanish speakers out there, that means two friends. And it's all along the Principal River. Dos Amigos has about 400 inhabitants, and about 25 years ago, as AMC started to work with communities to help them organize around their health needs, the Dos Amigos Community Assembly elected Orlando as a health leader. Since that time, he's been training with AMC in first aid, in how to run a community pharmacy, and he can even perform dental extractions. The only official doctors and dentists and the health center are in the main town, hours away by rowboat. So health leaders on the river, like Orlando, serve as the local doctors, attending to the primary health care needs in their communities. And you may be sitting there thinking, why a dental worker? Why not just go to the dentist? In Nicaragua, there's only one dentist for every 20,000 people. And in this particular region where Orlando lives, it's one dentist for every 50,000 people. So Orlando's services are eagerly sought out. During the trip, in each community, Orlando wore several hats. We offered dental cleanings and extractions and health education, so he helped to organize the patients. He helped to translate Mosquito language into Spanish, and he also delivered direct care. In one community, a young Mosquito woman came in to receive her care. Now, we were on the trip, 2 professional dentists and Orlando, the dental worker, and at that particular moment, we were all available. We were just taking first come, first serve. So she was asked, well, who would you like to go with? And she looked at all 3 of us, and she pointed to Orlando, and she said, I want to go with him. He speaks my language, and I know he does good work. Now, my dental colleague and I had helped to train Orlando. So we looked at each other and said, I think our work is done here. Orlando had not only the technical capacity to perform the extraction, but the right relationships and the connections in his community. So the empowerment of this local leader was well underway. But our relationship with him still has value and relevance. When we praised him on how much he could do and the service he was offering to these communities, and we asked him if there was anything else we could offer him as professional dentists, he said, it gives me joy and encouragement when you work with me. I do my work better knowing that you're there to support me. Orlando is an extraordinary example of the community health system that AMC has been developing for more than 30 years. Not only can he extract teeth, during a stay in another community, a sick patient arrived, carried by his family in a makeshift hammock. He was severely dehydrated and had traveled for about 6 hours in a boat to get to where we were. The health leader of that particular community was away, but the family opened up the community first aid kit that he manages and gave Orlando the saline solution that he placed intravenously, monitoring the patient until he was well enough to go home the next day. This kind of first response of thousands of trained leaders has saved countless lives across the regions where AMC is present, and in all aspects of health. And this has led to even better results in health, like children with better nutrition, mothers with safer birthing conditions, communities with clean water. Orlando is one example of this model of mission that is a coming together of the body of Christ, where everyone has a gift to share, not just those of us coming from the outside. Another example is Elba Ochoa, a 35-year-old empirical midwife who works to improve women's health in Bana Cruz, another community in the Caribbean region. Elba has a register of all the pregnant women in the community. She can carry out prenatal care. She can let the health center know when the woman's due date is and accompany her to the local hospital or clinic when it's time and stay with her if necessary through the delivery. And if really a push comes to shove, she can do the delivery right there in the community. Like Orlando's community, Bana Cruz is in the most impoverished part of Nicaragua, with the highest rates of teenage pregnancy and violence against women. Elba says, when women are mistreated, I support them. It should not be like this because men and women have the same rights. They cannot violate our rights because we are humans. Elba's had to overcome her own biases and practices. She says, before, I didn't like to help. If I saw a single pregnant woman, I thought they must be leading a promiscuous lifestyle and that they deserve to be pregnant. She continues, but in our trainings, AMC taught us that we don't know the circumstance that led that woman to be pregnant. Many women are violated or abused. Then she also adds, before I would sometimes say hurtful things and words to my children. Through AMC trainings, I learned that children start believing those hurtful things, and that alone does harm. So Elba's training with AMC and her community participation has led to a stronger commitment on her part to transform the reality of her community. She says, the more I learn with AMC, the more knowledge I gain, the more young girls I can help out of poverty. In another area of health and development, AMC works to improve food production and sustainable agriculture. David Rodriguez is a farmer and a community leader in the town of Nazareth, where AMC started a model farm for learning after a hurricane had washed away all the crops. David tells his story. In terms of economic resources and food in my house, it was just easy. That model farm for me is a treasure. Here was the answer for what I was missing, for my needs, my economic resources, food for my family. I was invited to participate and did my 2 years of training, and during these 2 years, AMC made me rich in knowledge. I did not feel shame because I was poor, badly dressed with worn out shoes, no. I considered myself a leader and with the same worth as anyone. And my situation started to change. I began to plant in an organized way. And the AMC agronomy technician was right there with me and said, I will help you. I planted cucumber plants and tomato plants. I was happy when I saw them grow. And I said to my wife, we're not going to work for someone else where we only earn $2 a day, not enough to live on. With the sales of the vegetables and beans, I was able to buy my first cow, something that was difficult for us when we only worked as day laborers. David concludes, today I'm happy. I have income, I'm raising kids. I'm thankful to AMC, and I hope my dream is that through us, other farmers can multiply what we have learned and done. Through the witness of Orlando, Elba, David, and so many others, God shows us new ways to understand the gospel and gives us little glimpses of the kingdom of heaven. When we recognize the capacity and commitment of those we serve, we can see that their dreams and faith are also rooted in the abundant life promised by God to all of us. This is the mystery that God has been revealing to me through my years of missionary service. In this way, I think I can not only fulfill Jesus' word in Matthew better, but I can lean on Isaiah's foundation of serving the world and proclaiming the year of the Lord's favor, where hope and possibility abound. So how do I measure my success now? In my personal transformation, I think I'm a lot more patient. And I discern now where I can contribute and maybe where I'm not needed, such as in the case of Orlando, working alongside him. And in my assignment, I work at being a resource to connect people across cultures and language and to build those strong relationships so that together we can discern what God is calling us to do and do well. But so you know, I still count the number of teeth extracted, and on my last trip, last September, I worked alongside 2 other dental workers that I've helped to train, and together we provided treatment for 600 people and extracted 1,122 teeth. Plus dental education with children and joy and cleanings and all kinds of other stuff. The need for dental care is not going away. But the approach to be more effective in how we deliver that care and the quality of the relationships we build along the way is the real measure of the success in mission. In chapter 12 of Paul's letters to the Romans, we read a lot about the criteria that God gives us about how to relate to one another. No pretenses, be respectful, be enthusiastic and have hope, be patient, pray all the time. Be hospitable, love no matter what, and really do what's needed of you according to the context. Cry with those who are crying. Rejoice with those who are rejoicing. The passage suggests that people who are largely left out of social systems are the people we should be spending time with, and that we should live in harmony with everyone. Despite the latter criteria, the passage also suggests that being in relationships will not be without its conflict, nor finding that everyone can always agree on how to live out the gospel. But we're not to seek to put others down in those moments. We must live out the experience and recognize our own need for transformation to really know God's grace. So I'll leave you with a few lessons learned after so many years of living the missionary experience. I've learned that our local partners, the very people we relate to and often are serving, in each place where we do mission, have ideas and creativity and commitment and capacity and faith and love to share. And that can bring meaning to my life and the church that I serve. I'm not in mission just to help those poor people. Helping is good, but if I'm not helped in the process, then I'm failing at my mission. I've learned that not just those who serve, but those who are being served have something to offer to God's kingdom. God placed them there long before we arrived as missionaries and has a plan for their lives too. There's room at the table for everyone. And indeed, it's my responsibility and our responsibility to listen and learn from others and support them in their efforts. And lastly, sometimes along the way, I hear people, when they hear what I do, say, "Oh, you're such a saint, noble." And I can assure you, I have plenty of days where I'm not saintly at all. I'm quite unsaintly. I'm called. And I'm called just like everyone sitting here. In one way or another, we are all missionaries. We are ordinary people of whom God asks the extraordinary to take courage and not be afraid when Jesus says, "Come, follow me." And as Easter people, we are hearing that message loud and clear in this season. The call can lead us to other places, or it can be a call right where we are. But it almost always involves new decisions about our lives and our commitment to God. So I'll close by saying, serving others transcends any debate that has the potential to divide us. At a time when so many United Methodists may be asking the question, what is wrong with our church? Mission gives us the opportunity to remember and celebrate what is very right with our church. I'd like to thank you for your continued support. I hope you feel encouraged that your engagement in mission in Nicaragua through me as your missionary is improving lives and bringing about God's kingdom, and it gives us the possibility to grow in the process. In Nicaragua, we greet one another and say goodbye using the same phrase. It is Dios les bendiga, and it means God bless you. Amen.